Welcome everybody. So today we are going to follow through with the much requested video of how to make rehearsal cubes. This is an excellent first shop project for your students, as well as something that's just really handy to have around. If you aren't using rehearsal cubes, I highly recommend it. They're way more functional than whatever chairs or desks you have laying around. So the first thing we're going to do here is take some plywood, and these cubes, I'm going to make them 18 by 18 by 18. That's pretty standard for chairs, as well as you can put them together to make couches, etc. So I'm going to use this guide here that I have for my circular saw. I'll put a link in the video of how to make this. It's going to be super handy for you if you don't have a table saw, and while I do believe in learning to saw straight in a line, it's really nice to cheat sometimes too. I would also highly recommend getting some of these just little strips of plywood that you saw in the beginning to stick under your full sheet of plywood. That way you can have the cut go directly on top of a workbench without cutting through to it. So just set your depth to go just below that plywood and then cut across. I do want to note here, I made a mistake and put the guide on the wrong side, so I'm cutting on the wrong side of the line. So it's just going to be just shy of 18, but we all make mistakes. So now we got to start doing some cross cuts. It is important to note that our total height is going to be 18 inches, so I'm cutting these at 17 1/4, the sides that is, to account for the top. So for this, you can do it with a miter saw if you have one. That'll be a little faster. I'm going to have to make 2 cuts because my saw, and probably yours, doesn't have a full capacity of 18 inches. So I can just flip it, cut it again. If you don't have a miter saw, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do it with the saw guide. You're just going to have to make 2 lines, bring your saw guide over, line it up on those arrows, and now you're just going to cut across. Easy peasy. Obviously, if you have a table saw, then you can just use your table saw, and that's what I'm going to do for the other 2, because I do have a table saw. But either way, doesn't take very much time. Now you've got all 4 of them, so they're all currently the same, but it is important to note that 2 of them need to have a shorter width, because when I line them up here, you can see that 2 of them are going on the outside and 2 of them on the inside. So those inside pieces are going to actually need to be shorter than 18 in order to make a full length of 18. My plywood's not exactly 3/4 of an inch, but I'm just going to pretend it is and take off 3/4 there and 3/4 there for a total of 1.5 inches off 18. So I'll just line it up here, and I'm just going to make a mark at 16.5, which will take 1.5 inches off. And again, I'm just going to take off with my little saw guide here. If you have a table saw, fantastic. Beautiful. And do the other one. And we're going to do some initial assembly of this cube before we get to doing the top, and I'll show you why in a minute. This would be much easier with a second person, especially if you've got students doing it. You're going to want a student holding and lining up while the other one is doing pre-drills and screwing in. A lot of the times when I'm doing projects like this, if they're a group project, I'll have one person pre-drill and the other person do screws and swap off. So that's definitely a way you can go about doing it. All right, once we get to the top, like I said, mine is not 3/4 of an inch, my plywood, so I'm going to be a little under 18 here. It's just a 16th. You don't have to worry about this, but I'm just going to make it as nice as possible, so I'm actually going to cut my top to 17 15/16 instead of 18. But now we got a nice snug fitting top. And I always start with just one corner. This is going to be the way you're going to screw most things in, platforms, flats, etc. You're just going to put one corner in, nice and square, and then work your way around to the other 4 corners. After you get those 4 corners in, just go and add in 1 or 2 screws in the middle. And for the final touch, we're going to add some handles in here because these things are heavy. I'm just going to mark in the center, and then I think I want a 5-inch handle, so I'm just going to mark 2.5 inches from either side of the center. This is totally custom, up to you. Then I'm going to use a speed square and mark it at 2 inches and 3 inches respectively from the top to give me a 1-inch tall opening for my handle. I'm then just going to take my speed square, you can use any straight edge, and mark those lines across as guides. I'm going to use a Forstner bit here, a 1-inch bit. If you don't have a Forstner bit, then any 1-inch drill bit will do, but I highly recommend, especially for prop purposes, investing in a cheap little Forstner drill bit set. But we're going to put 2 holes in here, and this is not fine woodworking, guys. I'm absolutely estimating where the center of these holes are, and I'm just going to connect them, and it's just going to be fine. All right. Lastly, we have the jigsaw. We're just doing a simple straight cut on here, so this is a great way to first introduce someone to the jigsaw, even though mostly with the jigsaw we are using it for curves, but this is a nice way to get started. We're just going to cut our 2 lines there, and then we're going to do some sanding, a lot of sanding. If you happen to have a router with a round over bit, then this is a great application, but sanding's just fine. All right, guys, thanks for following along on how to build a simple rehearsal cube. Remember, there are plenty of iterations of this, so feel free to riff on it if it doesn't fit exactly what you need from your cubes. Check out the other videos on my channel to learn how to use these tools and techniques, and especially check out my how to build a saw guide video if you are one of the ones stuck without a miter saw or a table saw, because it really helps if all you're relying on is that circular saw. But till next time, do me a favor, have yourself a super day.